and tried on his uniform to play soldier. I Am a Soldier Too seemed an ironic title for a book dedicated to proving the opposite. Now, you could see these rescue fantasies playing out in all kinds of ways, like the famous $17 million ad that featured Bush giving a protective hug to a girl whose mother had died in the World Trade Center. In the ad, the girl is quoted as saying, "He's the most powerful man in the world, and all he wants to do is make sure I'm safe." Or take the invention of the mythical security mom, who supposedly was desperate for a presidential sheriff to defend her and her children. Or all the rhetoric, empty rhetoric, about how we were going to rescue Afghani women from their burqas, or we were going to save Iraqi women from Saddam Hussein's quote-unquote rape rooms. It would be one thing if we had just invoked these fantasies to get us through a hard time. But our leaders use these fantasies as a substitute for crucial action. Look, for example, at how the New York City firefighters were expected to settle for hero worship in the place of working radios, safety equipment, and the economic support they needed and had begged for in order to be effective heroes. Or the 9/11 widows, who got denounced the minute they quit playing the role of helpless homemaker victim and began to push the government for an accounting of the decisions and missteps that led up to 9/11. There are real consequences to acting according to a made-up script, and real people paid them. America as a whole has suffered. Instead of an actual effort to improve national security and hone a working military strategy, we have been fed adolescent fantasies about missions accomplished and Amber Alerts and evildoers crushed. Living in a myth cleared the way to the erosion of civil liberties and government endorsements of torture. It led us into a misbegotten war against a people who had not attacked us and crippled our fight against those who did. And back home, it closed the door to badly needed introspection and insight. So here we are now, 6 years out from the attacks. If the polls on public attitudes toward Bush's performance and the Iraq War are any indication, we may finally be ready to ask some hard questions about our response to 9/11. And in that regard, as troubling as all this is, we also live at a moment of possibility. By putting us through a trauma much like the original trauma that produced our national myth, the attacks on 9/11 present us with a historic opportunity to revisit that past and reverse that long denial, to resolve the old story in a way that honors the country and its true history, to see ourselves and our frailties in a realistic light instead of papering them over with buckskin bravado and dangerous delusions. I want to thank you very much for listening.
You've been watching journalist and author Susan Faludi speaking about her newest book, The Terror Dream, Fear and Fantasy in Post-9/11 America. In a moment, we'll return to the question and answer segment from this presentation. Susan Faludi spoke at Powell's City of Books in Portland, Oregon on October 19, 2007. Her other books include Stiffed, The Betrayal of the American Man, and Backlash, The Undeclared War Against American Women. To find out more about the author and her work, please visit her website at www.susanfaludi.com. And now we return to Susan Faludi talking about her latest book, The Terror Dream, Fear and Fantasy in Post-9/11 America.
I can take comments, questions. Yes?
I'm glad that you ended on a hopeful note, because
Because there's not much to feel hopeful about.
But as I was listening to you, I kept thinking of backlash, and it seems like the backlash never went away.
Is everyone here, or do you want me to? The comment was that it seemed, as she was listening, she was thinking of backlash, and it feels like the backlash never went away. No, and it's I mean, I feel like all my life I've been watching women in this country make great strides, only to run up against this seemingly invisible wall of resistance. And if I were to, kind of try and make some connections between my books, and I'm only half conscious of what those connections are. Probably readers know better than I do, but it's that this book is partly looking at the historical underpinnings of that backlash, because that wall of resistance really is this mythology of and this embedded dynamic of men can only be strong if American women are weak. And so every time women get up ahead of steam, we run up against this mythology. Yes?
So how do you think this history from colonial days forward will play out if Hillary is going to be commander-in-chief?
Good question. You all heard it. How is this going to play out if Hillary is commander-in-chief? Well, you already see. She's a complicated figure, and early on she was, and she still is. So it's particularly with this latest decision to go along with the idea, calling the Iranian Revolutionary Guards terrorists. You see her trying to prove that she's man enough to hold the office. But more recently, she's really come out in the open and courting women's vote more directly. And when she was in Oakland a few weeks ago, I was back home, she was at a rally saying, if you elect me, I will put an end to cowboy diplomacy. So I think she herself is still a work in progress, but the idea of that a woman can be is now a front runner on the Democratic slate, and that she is electable, and that the media has finally sort of accepted that possibility is, I think, a sign, along with the rising national disgust at where the country has gone, that people are beginning to question the sanity of following this mythology. Where that will lead it's hard to say at this point, and it depends on a lot of things, including another, God forbid, another attack. Will people just retreat back into their back into the mythology? Yes.
I wonder if you could talk about how much the mythology is perhaps driving policy, as opposed to the mythology being mobilized to drum up support for the policy,
Right.
and how that interacts.
Right. Well, it is, it's this inevitable chicken or egg. I mean, it's going both ways. And certainly the Bush administration, or Bush's handlers anyway, have been very astute at massaging that imagery and preying on people's fear by offering them these consoling fictions. And some of it is conscious. For example, Karl Rove, in the weeks after 9/11, he made repeated trips to Hollywood and then invited movie moguls to the White House, and urged them to put together basically propaganda. I think he called it communicating, the mission ahead, and with his special, PowerPoint items about, these people are evil, and one of the results of that was a film that played on more than 10,000 cinemas across the country as a sort of short film, like almost, a trailer, and was shown in classrooms all around the nation as offered as a study guide. And it was called The Spirit of America, and it was basically a rapid-fire montage of old movie heroes. It was quite heavy on Westerns, and it began and ended with the opening and closing scene of The Searchers. So